Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The 2023 NFL Draft just finishes up, and we're taking a look at the next crop of prospects, taking a way too early look at the 2024 NFL Draft. Talking about some players that projecting a little bit as guys that, if they take a step in 2023, will be first round prospects in 2024. And then some guys that, quite honestly, could have declared this year and had been first round picks. So, again, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. The 2023 NFL Draft was a blast, doing a lot of different mock drafts, a lot of different scenarios and player evaluations. You guys have been absolutely awesome. So, again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Going to work in a lot of NFL Draft content this summer as we get into our summer scouting, getting an early look on these guys in the 2024 class. So, again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to talk about the quarterback's position. That's kind of the one position that you really look ahead the most for, right? If we're going to pass on a quarterback in the 2023 draft, what are some of the quarterbacks? You saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do this, right? Pass on Will Levis at 19, because we're really taking a look at what quarterbacks do we have our eyes on in the 2024 NFL draft. And the first guy, Caleb Williams, and you see Drake May sitting there at 7th. He's going to be a top 3 pick if he continues where he left off in 2023. I just couldn't really work him in there, and I didn't want to do trades and project trades. Caleb Williams is the quarterback one, I think, for most people heading into the 2024 NFL draft. The closest prospect to Pat Mahomes and the arm talent, the athleticism to extend plays, how like the playmaking ability he has. If you're a college football fan, you got a chance to watch him at USC. You see that all over his game. And so he's the guy that I think is the premier quarterback one heading into this 2023 season in the 2024 NFL draft. The next guy I want to talk about, and there's a few guys in this class that are just blue chippers, guys who, I mean, it's really hard to see them falling out of the top 5, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. Would have been probably a top 7, 6 pick in this year's NFL draft, would have been the wide receiver one. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a very special prospect in the terms of his size, his speed, but most importantly, his body control. Like he's a 6'3" wide receiver who has phenomenal body control when he's going up and playing the football in the air. One of the most complete wide receivers we saw. And it's kind of crazy to think that he's only a second-year kid going into his third year of college football, because the athletic tools are off the chart. The maturity in which he plays the wide receiver position is off the chart. And Ohio State does a phenomenal job developing these wide receivers as clean route runners, guys who know how to run their routes and sit it down in zone coverage. Hard to see a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. falling outside the top 5, and quite frankly, outside of Caleb Williams, probably the best prospect in this class. And then number 3, going to the Indianapolis Colts, is another offensive tackle in Joe Alt. He is, again, one of those guys who I'd probably put in as a blue chip. 6'6 plus, 320 pounds, road grader in the run game, very solid in pass protection, kind of like Peter Skoronski, but I think with some more physical tools, in the sense that you watch his film, it's really hard to find bad reps. And Peter Skoronski maybe got pushed down the board a little bit because he didn't really have those physical tools like a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. or Broderick Jones had, but had the best film. Joe Alt, I think, couples really good film with those physical traits and the athletic skill set to be a all-pro offensive tackle at the next level. Number 4, the Arizona Cardinals take Brock Bowers. Would have been tight end 1 had he declared in 2023. Again, too young. Another guy that I'll raise my hand and say I'm not a tight end in the top 10. I'm not really a tight end. My Buffalo Bills took a tight end in the first round, and Dalton Kincaid. Brock Bowers is different though. Like, you watch his first 2 years in the SEC with Georgia, phenomenal inline blocker, but most importantly, just a guy that creates separation after the catch. He's an absolute menace to tackle. Really good hands. I can't even remember him dropping a football. And again, you mentioned the body control that Marvin Harrison Jr. has at the size. Brock Bowers also has that. And it's kind of funny to watch his game because he's not like the biggest or he's big and fast, but he just wins and he just catches footballs and he gets upfield. It's really he's a fun prospect to look for. And he's going to be, you see these tight ends changing fundamentally how offenses are run. Brock Bowers is a guy who can do that. Next off the board, Chicago wanted them to get an edge in the 2023 draft. I didn't think they got a game changer. They have that pick from Carolina. Jared Verse would have been my number 2 edge in this 2023 class. Could have gone to the draft, but he decided to stay at Florida State. If he even just puts together another season, the crazy part is it was only his first year playing at the Power 5 level after transferring from Albany. If he can improve on what his season was in 2022, you're looking at a top 5 prospect, in my opinion. Xavier Worthy, the next wide receiver that I have taken a look at in this 2024 class, really, really fast. But I think he couples that with he's got some good length. He's a little small. He's kind of like a Jordan Addison type body, but really twitched up, much more twitched up than Jordan Addison is, can create separation at all 3 routes. But I think what separates him as just not just a speedster. I think a lot of people, when they like to talk about Xavier Worthy, he's just really fast, can stretch the field. He's got some crazy movement skills. Like how quick he can change directions, create separation from defensive backs is a little special. And so I think you couple that with the vertical speed he brings to the table. He's probably going to be a top 10 guy that a lot of NFL teams will covet. If Quinn Ewers takes that next step, you could see Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy kind of put on a show. Drake May, quarterback 2. Hard to see him falling out of the top 3 if he continues what he did in 2023. I just didn't want to project trade. So New England Patriots wanted to go away from Mac Jones, tried to dish him. If they can't do that, they find themselves picking the top 5. Like Drake May's a guy that if you need a quarterback and you're sitting in the top 10, you're probably trading up and selling the farm to go get a guy like Drake May, similar to what the Carolina Panthers did in the 2023 draft. J.C. Latham, my next offensive tackle. I don't think he's played right tackle at Alabama. I don't quite think he's Joe Alt's level, but a former top 3 prospect according to 24/7 Sports nationally. He has all the tool sets. If he continues to put it together, he's an offensive tackle that probably works his way into the top 10. Dallas Turner, another Bama guy. Will Anderson got a lot of love the last couple of years. Dallas Turner on the other side is a very, very good pass rusher. You're seeing teams covet the pass rushing position. A lot of guys that I thought were drafted, like a guy like Lucas Van Ness, maybe a little early. Will McDonald, maybe a little early. You're seeing NFL teams prioritize getting pressure on the quarterback. Dallas Turner represents a guy who can do that at a high level. He's probably working his way into a top 15 pick. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry, another 3 straight Bama guys coming off the board in the top 10, going to Atlanta. Kool-Aid McKinstry is my cornerback 1 early. He has everything you want in a cornerback. And quite frankly, if he's going to be the number 1 cornerback in this class so far heading into the summer. If he drop my pencil here. If he continues where he's left off, like he's going to be a top 15 pick as well. And again, those are kind of some of the blue chippers. And then you get down to the next list here. Number 11, Olu Fashanu from Penn State, the offensive tackle. He's a guy that probably would have been a top 15 pick. A lot of scouts really liked him. Decides to come back to Penn State. I probably thought he should have went to the NFL draft, quite frankly. He's another tackle that might get beat out by guys like Joe Alt and J.C. Latham in terms of those guys are still developing. Olu Fashanu going into his 4th year. But he's another one of those top tackles in this class. And then I want to talk a little bit about the next quarterback in Quinn Ewers. This is like when you talk about projecting the NFL draft a year from now, you're looking at the quarterbacks, right? Because a lot of teams are saying, hey, are we gonna sell the farm to go get a guy like Will Levis, who we're not really sure on, has a lot of flaws in his game, or can we wait a year, not necessarily tank, but not be great, and take a look at the quarterbacks in the 2024 class? That's the position you project the most in the future. Quinn Ewers, the former number 1 prospect according to all recruiting sites, crazy arm talent. Looked good to start the season in his 2nd year at Texas and kind of had a weird story, right? He commits to Ohio State, reclassifies. So he's playing as a 17-year-old kid at Ohio State. He redshirts behind CJ Stroud, transfers to Texas. Really should have been his true freshman year at Texas in terms of his age. Looks good at times. He gets hurt. Didn't really put it together the rest of the year. But again, if it clicks for him, the arm talent is just off the charts. There's a reason why every single recruiting service loved him and kind of thought he was the next Trevor Lawrence. He's a guy that I think a lot of teams are looking at to be. He's a guy that just needs one good season. He has the skill set to be an elite quarterback at the next level. Teams will take him. Troy Franklin, the number 3 wide receiver in this class for me. He's a guy that he comes into Oregon. Long, good top end speed. What you saw last year, though, is the ability to win kind of at all 3 routes. And that's kind of like Xavier Worthy and Troy Franklin, kind of speedsters who stretch the field vertically, but are also now developing that ability to create separation underneath. And that's something that a lot of teams, you look at the first wide receiver off the board this year in JSN, you need to be able to separate at the next level. Like speed gone are the days where teams are just taking you because you run a 4.3 40. You need to be able to separate. You need to be able to get open to your quarterback quickly early in your route tree. Troy Franklin is adding that to his game at Oregon. If he continues to do that, I think he's going to be probably in that talk as a top 20 wide receiver. And that's another position that is being coveted in the NFL draft, right? I mean, maybe not this year because the wide receiving class was just not as talented, but you still saw what? Zay Flowers, JSN, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison all go in the first round when a lot of times people didn't have first round grades on those wide receivers because of the wide receiver market being so lucrative in free agency at the next level. Getting guys on rookie deals who can be playmakers, offenses, teams are kind of starting to covet a lot. Next guy, Amarius Mims. This now is getting to the projections, right? Amarius Mims hasn't played that much football, but he's a former top 10 national recruit from Georgia. He's played guard. I think he's going to play left tackle. Again, 6'6", 330 pounds. He's a good athlete. He's a guy that if he puts it together I mean, he's the prototypical tackle. He's athletic. He's big. He's strong. He's a guy that, and teams are drafting Georgia Bulldogs. He's a guy that, yes, needs to develop a little bit, but keep your eye on him as being a fast riser in terms of the 2024 NFL draft. And then you have a kind of the opposite guy in Graham Barton, who probably could have gone to the NFL. He could have. He's a redshirt senior, so he could have gone to the 2023 NFL draft. Probably would have been a top 50 pick. Decides to come back to Duke. He's a guy that's proven that if he just continues to show that he got better, will be a first round offensive lineman taken. And then Tony Grimes. This is. I'm early saying this is kind of my guy in the 2024 NFL draft. Another very similar to Quinn Ewers, right? In early, he reclassifies. He plays as pretty much a 17-year-old kid as a true freshman at UNC. Looks really good for a couple years. Then last year, I'm not really sure what happened with this UNC defense, but it completely fell apart. Tony Grimes flashed some serious athleticism and some serious ball skills. He has the length. He has the speed. He has the size. He goes to Texas A&M this year. I'm really interested because he's another guy that if he just puts together a year that shows that he's back on track, he's going to be a first-round talent. Very, very talented dude. And then another guy, another projection in Mason Smith from LSU. Tore his ACL as a year two. Very similar story to Brian Brazee, right? As a true freshman, he looks dominant. And you're like, this guy is special. Early year two, tears his ACL celebrating. It was absolute heartbreaker. He had like a tackle for a loss in the Florida State game. He celebrates, tears his ACL. If he's the guy that picks up, Brian Brazee, the problem with Brian Brazee is didn't really pick up where he left off, right? The film in 2022 for Brian Brazee was not great. So he falls to the back half of the first round. Mason Smith, if he's a guy that shows that he's still a dominant freak that the NFL is going to covet, could be a guy that works his way into the first round. And then JTT from Ohio State. I'm not there as a top 10 prospect for JTT yet. Because I see like a really, really strong player that can go right through tackles, gets behind the line of scrimmage. I think he needs to develop some pass rushing chops a little bit more. But if he does that, I mean, he could be a top 10 pick. I just need to see that. Again, I'm not going to comp him to Lucas Van Ness, but again, a guy that's really young. He's going into his third year. If he puts that together a little bit more, could be a guy that NFL teams are taking in the top 10. Leonard Taylor, third-year kid out of Miami. He's a guy that former top, I want to say he's a top 10 prospect coming out of Miami. Goes to Miami, hasn't really dominated yet, but he's 6'3", he's 305 pounds. He's very, very good laterally. He's a guy that another projection in the sense that, and you see a lot of teams take those guys who are just projections, the younger prospects who still need to put it together a little bit. I think a lot of NFL teams see those guys and say, hey, get him into our organization, get him coached up, let him be a professional football player who perfects his craft. Now we're talking about a guy that's really, really special. Kalen King from Penn State is the next guy off the board to Baltimore. That's a really interesting one in the sense that I was watching Joey Porter Jr. tape, and I like Joey Porter Jr. He was a cornerback 3 for me. He's a top 20 guy on my big board. Kalen King on the other side of the field is like, who is this guy, and is he in the NFL draft? And he's coming back to Penn State for one more year. He's a guy that I also think is one of the better cornerbacks in this class. And then Junior Colson had to work a Michigan guy in there. Maybe a little bit of a bias, but 6'2" and change, 230 pounds. But he has the length. He has the speed. He's going to run really fast at the combine. Michigan always gets their guys right in terms of testing at the combine. He's the modern day NFL linebacker. And I get it. Jeremiah Trotter had probably better film. If you look at who's the best linebacker in this class, probably Jeremiah Trotter. But Junior Colson, as a guy going into his third year, he's played a lot of football for Michigan the first 2 years there. He's a guy that I think we'll be talking about. And then Shamar Turner, another guy from Texas A&M that I think he needs to figure out where he's going to play. I think he's more of a three-tech guy. He's kind of lined up everywhere for Texas A&M. He's another guy that I watched him during the spring game, like super, super talented, a ton of power in his hands, but hasn't put it together on the field yet consistently. But if he does, like keep an eye on him as being a top 20 prospect. And then Braylon Trice. Different story than Shamar Turner, because Braylon Trice was a guy that was extremely productive in 2022, could have went to the 2023 NFL draft. He's a guy that, very similar to Jared Verse, I think he believes in what Washington is doing, so he comes back for another year. But, man, he has some serious power, some serious bend around the edge. He's a guy that I think could be a first-round target. And then JT Sanders, another tight end. You look at this tight end class, as much excitement as the tight end class was bringing. I'm pulling up my tight end rankings here. As much excitement as people talked about this tight end class, I think these group of guys have a little bit higher of a ceiling, right? Brock Bowers, Jatavion Sanders, 6'4", almost 250 pounds. He's very good in the run game. Michael Trigg from Ole Miss is another guy to look at. Eric Gilbert, another that's kind of a projection, but another super talented guy. This class out of high school was extremely talented, and if they can kind of put it together on the field, I mean, you're looking at some really, really difference makers at the tight end spot. Roma Duzne, 6'3", he's not a burner, but man, does he just understand the game of football, creating separation. Another guy that could have entered the draft in 2023, probably would have been a top 50, top 75 pick. Lacks the top end physical traits. He's not a burner. He's probably not the most twitched up guy, but runs really good routes. He has a really good catch radius. He's a guy that I think a lot of teams would covet, in the sense that he's going to be a guy that immediately impacts your ball club year one as a rookie. JJ McCarthy, that's another projection here. The fourth quarterback in this draft, put together. I mean, at the end of the year for Michigan, like, was starting to connect on some of those deep throws, pushing the ball down the field vertically. Phenomenal athlete and extending plays, which is another thing you're seeing teams really like. Quarterbacks that can extend plays outside the pocket, be playmakers, be difference makers athletically. JJ McCarthy certainly has that. He's a former 5-star recruit, has the arm talent. If he continues with what he did at the end of his second year at Michigan, I think you're talking about him as kind of a back end quarterback in the first round, because, again, the talent and the skill set is there. Cooper Beebe, a guy that should have went to the NFL draft, probably would have been a top 50 pick, was a top 50 guy on my big board before he decided to go back from Kansas State. Johnny Wilson. This is a really interesting one. And I thought, like, I was thinking more about at this point, like, what guys do I want to talk about in terms of potential first round talents? Johnny Wilson is 6'7", a phenomenal body control when going up and catching the football. He runs pretty well for a guy that big. He just drops the football sometimes. Like, the ball hit him with two hands and he just won't come up with it. If he cleans that up, like, teams are gonna, I'm not going to comp him to Mike Evans. I think that'd be a little ridiculous, but he's a guy that when he's covered, he's not covered, because you can throw the ball up. He's very comfortable tracking the football. It's just he's got to catch the football more. He's got big hands. If he puts that together, limits those drops, I could see an NFL team, especially as a red zone target, really. And again, Kansas City, like, you're going to move the football. You know you're going to move the football. For Kansas City, you got to score touchdowns when you get inside the 10. When you have a guy with the catch radius that Johnny Wilson has, I think people will kind of covet that at the end of the first round. Cedric Van Pran, another one of those Georgia pipeline offensive linemen, can play center, can play guard. I really like his game. He's probably going to be a guy that is a first round, maybe early second round difference maker on the interior. Malachi Moore, I think this year's Brian Branch, just can do everything. I think he'll play what Brian Branch did. And then Blake Fisher, another offensive tackle playing on the right side, another guy that's a very intriguing guy. And then the last guy I want to talk about, who I was going to work in here, I'll put him in here right now because I couldn't really figure it out. Malik Neighbors from LSU, the wide receiver. I was really battling this, and I'm looking at this wide receiver class and trying to figure out who I want to kind of talk about. I was watching some Kayshon Boutte film, and Malik Neighbors is the guy there. He's again not necessarily the most gifted, kind of like Roman Duzne, like not the speediest, not the most quick twitch, but a guy that has really good body control, catches the football in contested catch situations, and puts up just big time numbers for that LSU offense. If he takes that next step as well, again, I think you're talking about him being a potential first round pick. And to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this class early, is there's a lot of guys in this class that are going into their third year. We're not draft eligible in 2023. That if they take that step, that's what you're gonna see. That guys like Lucas Van Ness, who come out of nowhere, who are young prospects, who have a lot of talent, those are the guys that teams are going to pick. So you're looking at, yes, you have some guys who are just Cooper Beebe, Cedric Van Pran, who you know what you're getting. They're really good prospects who decided to come back, and they're kind of older prospects. But you have a lot of guys who are young, like a Malik Neighbors, like a Blake Fisher, who, if they continue to get better going into their third year, will be first round NFL draft picks. Again, more importantly, appreciate you guys checking this out and let me know. I mean, I'm starting the notebook here about my draft prospects heading into 2024. We'll do a lot of work in the summer with this, but wanted to take an early look at some of these 2024 cats. Again, appreciate you guys checking this out. If you do enjoy the content, of course, consider subscribing to the channel. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.